Firstly, I'd like to pay my respects to my ancestors for giving me a passionate and fighting spirit to navigate a somewhat difficult space for Yamaji people living in the Midwest and Western Australia. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge my creative peers, such as you in the audience today, and honour the many years of arts and creative conversations in activation of creative ecology approaches to contributing to making our community a better place and a thriving creative community. And thirdly, I'd like to honour my creative peers who are now gone to their ancestors. And I also acknowledge the loss and the sorry business that is flowing really strong everywhere and in the Yamaji region as we attend funerals and attend to our ceremonial obligations and cultural obligations in that way. But let me read a poem first. I'm going to break and read from False Claim of Colonial Thieves throughout my talking. And I'll read one small little response for you to think about. Privilege blindness. If environmental scientists say so, water comes from a plastic bottle. What lies on or within country cannot be seen, for the privileged are privilege blind. So allow me to position myself in this conversation with you this morning. My name is Charmaine Green, and my writing name is Charmaine Papertalk Green. Papertalk is my mother's maiden name, and from Perth to the East Coast, I have people in writers' festivals and conversations tell me that I have a very clever pen name. The truth is, it is my mother's maiden name, and how lucky am I as a writer to be able to make paper talk, to tell stories, convey meaning, challenge the status quo, evoke uncomfortability and a range of emotive responses, create collaborations and partnerships in my creative journey. I was born at Eridu, railway siding, between Mullewa and Geraldton on the Bootanoo, you would know as the Greenough River. I proudly belong to the Yamaji Nation through my father and mother. I come from a family of 14, of which 8 of us remain earthside. I was raised in Mullewa, schooled in Mullewa and Perth, and have worked in Canberra, Brisbane, Port Hedland, Perth, Geraldton and Mullewa. I am the very first in my family to have worked very hard to achieve a PhD in autoethnography, narrative inquiry. I have many people ask me, what does that actually mean? So the challenge is for you to go and Google it and have a read and work out what that means. It includes storytelling, narrative. My siblings have been in the Defence Force in the Army, train driver, auto electrician, kindergarten assistant, weavers, painters, storytellers, and I did have a young brother who was a boxer. So that's what some of my family have engaged in, and all of my sisters paint, weave, and are great storytellers. I've worked for the past 14 years in Aboriginal health, public health, research on a number of research projects across the Midwest and across Western Australia, clinical yarning, the Stork Midwives Project, housing in Geraldton, cultural security within the Geraldton Health Service providers, stroke and brain inquiry research, and cultural orientation programs with multidiscipline health science students on rural placements in Geraldton, Mullewa, Mount Magnet and Carnarvon. I work with an incredible team of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal researchers, and we are very lucky to be encouraged to use the arts within any of our yarning circles and any of our methodologies in engaging the community. I've been writing poetry since I was at high school, And this is an creative art practice of mine that has travelled with me across Australia. As a teenager to Canberra, I went to Canberra when I was 17 to work for 6 years, and then up to the Pilbara to Port Hedland, South Hedland. I lived for 14 years and worked, and then came back home to Geraldton and Mullawa because I wanted to be on my own country and be able to be involved in my own cultural group's business and conduct business and help develop the creative community in the best way that I could. So I've been part of the creative communities and on my creative ecology journey since the early 1990s proper. And I've been in many roles on the arts and culture continuum, as an arts administrator at Yamaji Arts, as a grant writer for many people and places and organisations, as a grant assessor. So I've sat on the state and on the national level looking at not just Aboriginal grant funding, everyone's grants that come in, and have a good idea of the different types of festivals and activities that are activated right across Australia. And I have a very good idea of what comes out of the Midwest. I read those grants and I've read those grants, and I must say not enough comes from our region, not enough of the applications that are assessed at the state and the national level come from here. So what are we doing? Why is that so? Why are we not rising to the challenge of contributing to our thriving creative communities by asking for those resources and support to activate all of these spaces? I was 16 years of age when I decided I would privilege my life through a Yamaji lens. So what does this all mean for my journey using the creative ecology approach? An approach I did not give much attention to consciously until into my 50s, as I prefer to create things, see that happen, and then build on or add to it, all the while lifting the visibility of Yamaji people and the profile of Yamaji people in Geraldton, in Mullawa, in the Midwest, in the state, nationally and internationally when we get the opportunity to do so. But moving into creative environments outside of Geraldton, outside of my comfort zone and outside of where I live, I was forced and invited into thinking deeper about the whys, the hows, and what does it all mean in relation to myself, my family, my community, and the wider community. So really drilling down and thinking about why do we do the things that we do? And more importantly, what is the bigger picture? The bigger picture for me is social transformation in a community. And that basically means striving to make our community better for everyone and not forgetting anyone and not leaving anyone in that journey. I'm going to read another poem, and it's a section of Honey to Lips Bottle Brush. I love bottle brush. Sucking nectar bottle brush sweet, wattle seeds eating, tasting time ago, visions of fire sticks, ancestors walking, tracks etched into land across country. Honey to lips bottle brush, red fire dotted campsites, culture banished, torment real, wheat grain money worshipped, not on this land, not here. So in this yarning with you this morning, I intended to offer some insights into my creative ecology approach by weaving several personal creative journeys in collaborative literature, exhibitions, the role in Aboriginal art centres, and perhaps art activism. In the younger years of my writing career, I was always referred to as a political poet. And I didn't really understand that, and I didn't know what that meant, because what I was writing about my lived realities and my experiences as a Yamaji woman wasn't political, it was a reality of what happens in life. And through poetry and through creative literature, this was a way of getting a story across. And what I really love about literature is that you can put things in a book and someone can pick up that book or find that book or buy that book, but they could leave it on their coffee table until they are ready to read it. It's not there forcing people to read. You become ready, and if anything makes you uncomfortable, then it's not the book that's doing that. It's evoking some responses. It's something within you, and you need to find out, why am I uncomfortable? Why don't I want to read about Yamaji history? Why don't I want to know about Yamaji history? Maybe I don't know about Yamaji history because I wasn't given the opportunity to learn it in school. So there are a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to unpack. But it's your responsibility, not mine. I can share my stories, I can share my storytelling, but the responsibility to have some critical thinking and opening your mind belongs with you. There's a quote that I liked when reading a little bit about creative ecologies. To study creativity by focusing on the individual alone is like trying to understand how an apple tree produces fruit by looking only at the tree and ignoring the sun and the soil that supports its life, and also the relationships that support that tree as well, in us watering if the rain didn't come and all of those sorts of things. So what is creative ecology? Can I have an indication from people in the room if you know what a creative ecology is? Put your hand up. It's not many people, and but there are some, and that's hope. That gives us hope, moving forward. So it is important to offer a creative ecology definition, simply because I believe this concept and approach does not appear to be normalised in the Midwest creative environments, especially the Yamaji creative environment. I don't hear or have any Yamaji peers having conversations or creative ecology conversations. Although a practical translation is observed when artists give art talks at art exhibitions, at art forums, offering their insights into their creative processes, motivations to create, relationships, and the bigger picture outcomes on what you're wanting to get out of it. This is part of creative ecology. That is the approach. Allow me to offer one very straightforward definition here. Creative ecology is a collaborative investigation into what makes Australia's creative culture tick. The aim is to understand what it takes to build thriving creative communities and develop tools to foster their growth. These tools could be relational, could be key creative leaders, like you see the Julian Kenny running around across Western Australia and everywhere, and bringing people together, evoking responses, developing concepts, and just getting on with business on his creative ecology journey. Collaborations is probably the biggest one that jumped out and leaped out at me, and looking at different models around creative ecology. Arts organisations are tools, museums, galleries, exhibitions, funding bodies, writers' festivals, but most importantly from a Yamaji perspective is the intracultural collaborations. When I say intracultural, I mean between different Yamaji groups. Is the collaborations there are really important in building relationships, maintaining, transmitting our culture, and passing on to the younger generation. a Yamaji creative ecology is the same as what I've just said, but we have always looked at things in a holistic way, in that everything is connected and flows in a circular pattern rather than a linear and straight line. Everything and everyone is connected, either good or bad. Everything is connected to make things come to the point of where you create or where you are. Therefore, working in silos and alone is not quite understood, because everything is connected and defined by relationships with each other. Of course, we go away on our own when we create our artworks, but when we create and come back with our artworks, we still go back into our peer groups to exhibit, to bring people in, to contribute to magazines, to films, to promote and lift our community and what we were doing. In reflection during this process, I found this yarn a little bit difficult on which angle would I take with you. Could I come in and talk about the colonial impact on Yamaji people? Could I come and talk about all of those things only? Or did we need to drill down and think a little bit differently on what creative ecology could mean for us all? And it's important because if you know the history of the Yamaji region or Western Australia, how many of you know our history? How many of you were taught our history in the West Australian government schools or the Catholic private schools? Put up your hand if you say you didn't receive anything. Don't be scared, because we know this reality. We know that the Western Australian government in the past and pulling through did not allow our history and the Yamaji way of living to be taught. And how richer would our community have been now if that was allowed way back then? I mean, in Mullawa, even I didn't learn anything about a Captain Cook who wasn't even a captain, who didn't even navigate around Australia, but was touted as the founder and the discoverer of this, our land and our countries. I learnt square dancing at the school. I was doing all these colonial songs. I was singing a Maori song. I didn't even know it was Maori until I went away. So all of these incredible things didn't enrich the generation's knowledge and understanding of our history. And I believe we have generations of quite ignorant people when it comes to Aboriginal history, and it's not their fault. It is the fault of the systems that allowed that. And we have a lot of catching up to do, and we do that all the time now. That's why you see us perhaps sometimes in your face, or see us lifting the visibility of Yamaji arts and culture and craft. I'll touch a little bit on collaborations, and I want to talk about, I've authored 2 books with Australian settler author, he owns that term, John Kinsella, called False Claim of Colonial Thieves and Art, both published by Muggaballa Books in Broome. It was in the early 2000s, I'd overheard John asking someone about my uncle in an old AC/DC gallery, and my uncle who'd then recently passed away. So as our Yamaji mob do, when we hear someone mentioning a family name, we want to know what they want. So I approached and asked why he wanted to know about my uncle. And from this encounter, we began conversations, and our poetic friendship of up to 20 years has endured and has lasted. John encouraged me to publish my first book just like that. And after 10 years of a conversation, I agreed to a poetic collaboration resulting in False Claim of Colonial Thieves and art. It took me close to 9 months, or maybe even more, to accept this invitation of collaboration, mainly because John was a white male colonial settler writer, and he owns that label. He will tell you that himself. And I had no business collaborating in that space with him. So it took me a long time to work through that and to think of why this should happen and why it shouldn't. And the shouldn'ts didn't outweigh why it should. But after much reflection, I came from Mullawa. John grew up on a farm in Mullawa. I lived in Geraldton. John went to boarding school in Geraldton. He wrote poetry, I wrote poetry, and most importantly, he is a strong advocate for country, human rights and environmental issues. John was indeed my poetic creative peer, and the process of collaboration began. We both thought the timing was right for two distinct, different voices to come together and create conversations that would challenge the status quo. And it did challenge the status quo. In Geraldton, I had people deliberately put their head down or walk across the road when this book came out. That didn't offend me because it was their problem, not mine. In other places, I had other Aboriginal people ask me why was I collaborating with a white writer, a male writer at that. And some of the reasons is our belonging to the same spaces and writing together. And we pushed on. In the Sydney Review of Books 2023, Wiradjuri writer, teacher and academic Janine Leanne wrote in a review, Everlasting Sovereignty of Art, there are many radical things about Charmaine and John's poetic yarns. The first thing is that this really is a collaboration grown out of and nurtured by many years of respect, friendship and understanding, built on and from a shared space. In a settler colony, collaboration is not about sharing textual space equally in the same way. Equality is not achieved by treating people all the same. Treating all people the same results in the repetition of the status quo. This is why I gently remind people, be careful when you respond and say, I treat everyone the same, because you might be doing exactly the opposite. In regards to false claim of colonial thieves, Janine Leanne says, what comes to the fore in false claims through a series of sharp, beautifully crafted and posed poems was the most important conversation of our time. How do First Nations people and settler invaders move forward in a shared conversation that acknowledges the past, looks to the future of our countries, the nation and our planet? That question we will come back to in my closing remarks. And it really did challenge the status quo. Collaboration, so I love the collaboration side of things in my own journey. I don't get to do as many as I like, but when I do, I take careful consideration on what that collaboration will mean, and will it lift the visibility of Yamaji storytelling and the Yamaji presence. If it does that, then it's a big yes from me. The one that I wanted to talk about was the alternative archive, Truth, Myths and Legends of the Midwest. The curators wrote at the time about the archives exist but are not always questioned. Still, over time, documents and stories may be accepted as truth, even though what they represent is a selective version of events, not necessarily impartial. The European history of Australia is seemingly well documented. History is recorded in photos, memoirs, arts, texts have become the source of material of many archives. Looking closely, however, we find details and stories that are concealed or hidden from view. And this is where Yamaji history comes in. It's been historically silenced, made invisible, and hidden from view. The Aboriginal stories, the colonial stories, the overlap of truth, myth and legend may create a new form of archive. The alternative archive truth, myths and legends of the Midwest brought together those 12 artists to have those conversations. And I remember a distinct conversation with the emerging curator at the time, Ingrid, regarding false claim of colonial thieves, and she had read it, and she had gone and sit in Our Lady of Mount Carmel, the church built by Monsignor Hawes, and was thinking around this idea that I was challenging what I call the Hawes myth. That the myth is that Monsignor Hawes built the churches, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, the Geraldton Cathedral across the road, on his own, and other places, which did not credit the local people who had helped him build and quarry stones in Mullawa and Chapman Valley. I spent time at the Mullawa quarry recording the stories with older family members, video recording and audio recording in the mid-90s. They needed to be made visible within these Oars narratives. I invited my eldest son, Mark Smith, to collaborate in creating 4 collage pieces around the themes of the Oars myth, Aboriginal concepts of archives and the impacts of colonisation. Those artworks will be seen as of next Friday, I believe, this Friday at GRAG. They've been pulled out of the archives. So there was a whole lot of things going on there, and there's a whole lot of time ticking away here. So I better move along. I can't read another poem. For me, the biggest thing is making visible how collaborations could work across community and shifting the perspective and mindset of many of those in the creative industry. And those not in the creative industry but hold the creative funding is one of the tensions and challenges. They have no idea about the creative industry, but they assess our grants at the federal, at the government levels, and it makes it very difficult in having conversations. Connectivity through relationships and peer support is important. We don't live in isolation, and artists, because we are always embedded in our community and society, working towards exhibitions, art workshops, art projects, seminars, selling at markets, talking online. Our peer support network is vital for our existence. And I would have liked to have spoken more about Yamaji Arts and the birth of Yamaji Arts from the collaboration of a group of students from TAFE in the late 1990s, from which emerged the Yamaji Arts Centre in 2010, and the aim around the collectivity of that. The position of culture needs a mention before I run out of time. Just because you don't like it or understand it doesn't mean it isn't worthwhile. Our challenge is to find ways for everyone to express their culture. We will all be better for it. And we have this romantic idea of a pan-Australian culture which dismisses diversity. Every time you sing "We Are One, We Are Australian," what does this really mean? Is it about community cohesion and relationship building with different cultures, or is it building a pan-Australian identity? I'll leave that one with you to reflect upon. So we need to include Aboriginal people who in the past have been silenced. We need to pull apart the concept of one culture in Geraldton because it's still strong, and we need to be conscious of activating a creative ecology and who is responsible for that. Is it City of Greater Geraldton? Is it the Julian Kennys of the world? Is it the Regional Arts WA? Who is it? Who makes our community stronger? I'll leave you with those buzzwords again for your creative ecology activation, because that's your responsibility to help you tackle your activations yourself. What makes a creative community? What does it need to survive? And that question from Jeanine Leanne, how do First Nations people and settler invaders move forward in a shared conversation that acknowledges the past and looks to the future of our countries, the nation and our planet? Thank you for allowing me, to the organisers, to this opportunity to speak today, and for giving me 1 minute extra. Thank you.